can talk about it now. Let's talk about crafting.
So bad. Okay, let me just say.
And put some whiskey in my
Firstly,
coffee.
we do not have a crafting system, but I think something I haven't heard people talk about. A lot of people have spoken about the lack of orbs of scouring, which I think is a mistake. But one of the other problems that really compounds it is that there's not only a lack of scours, there's a lack of any form of reforge. So PoE 1, we have alterations and chaos. That's a form of reforge. It's like reforge is an item with new modifiers. Moves on into essences, reforge an item with X modifier, harvest, reforge with a cold modifier. They have stripped the game of any form of reforge, which means that there's no way to like backtrack progress on a craft. There's no way to go backwards in rarity with crafts. You can't. It's just like you are locked in. Once you progress, you are locked in. And like anyone who's saying, but omens are not a thing in the game. Like unless you've enslaved half the fucking player base to like do your bidding and farm for you,
that's
you
like
are not using
just
omens.
use Hinokoras. Yeah,
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
like no one is using. I haven't even seen a crafting omen, and like there's no way I'm gonna buy one. It's just why did they? PoE 1's crafting system is not only like one of the greatest crafting systems in any game, it's like one of the best systems, just like hands down, in a game ever created. It's genius, it's brilliant, and it's so strange to me that they don't recognize that. And like for what are they removing it? For
honestly,
like ground loot?
Yeah, I think they definitely recognize that, right? Like the whole, like if you think about, let's take Chaos Orb in PoE 1. You are reforging an item with new rare mods, right? Or an Orb of Alteration. You're reforging an item with blue mod. What's the difference between applying an Orb of Alteration and picking up a blue item with exactly that base? Nothing. There's no difference, right? Like it's exactly the same. But it's the same with the well issue. What's the difference between you having to run to refill your maps or you just getting back to your hideout and having it filled up? It is exactly the same. It's friction is the difference, right? Like that's what it comes down to. So yeah, instead of applying 19 Orb of Alterations, you're gonna have to pick up 19 of that item to have the same effect. That is like what I was talking about earlier, and it goes to crafting. It goes through like once that seed sips into your head, you will realize it everywhere in the game. Those small things. And so I agree with you, but at the same time, I don't know how they could make something similar to PoE 1 that's as good without copying it one-to-one. Because like you said, them having such a good system but wanting to be different from PoE 1 is also very stifling, right?
Just copy it. Straight up. Like, okay, you don't have to have... there's no way they could put in all the systems because the complexity of PoE 1's crafting comes hand in hand with the complexity of the mod pool. And PoE 2's mod pool is very, very limited. If they just add in alterations, the crafting bench and scours, and maybe even essences the way they were, I think that sets a very, very strong foundation for future systems. Maybe they've got some big brain thing that they're planning to do, but the thing is, if you don't have the foundations, it completely undermines all future systems that will be added. How will they ever add influenced modifiers to the pool if there are no reforge systems in the game? If there are no scours in the game, you like, how will you craft anything good? Like, it's hard to craft something good with a limited mod pool. How are we ever going to craft something good when they say like, oh, we're adding Shaper and Elder influence to the game or something like that? There needs to be those foundations added, and I cannot fathom why they have removed them. There's like this obsession with you need to find your upgrades on the ground. I don't know when that started, man. Like, since when? Why?
But that's exactly the point. I think the GG saw, for example, Last Epoch pull it off, which I think is very, like, you can say about Last Epoch whatever you want, but I think Last Epoch system of making ground loot work is the only one that works for me personally. And that is basically, for people who don't know, exalted mods, which you can pick up and you cannot craft them. They're better than crafted mods. And then you basically take that base item and you iterate on top of it, right? But otherwise, I don't see, like, because in Last Epoch, if Last Epoch had a Chaos Orb, it wouldn't be the same. because you're never going to pick up an item that isn't exalted. So it's not the same, right? Like, and that's the only way you can do it. But in PoE 2, it just feels like you're adding extra like nonsense. You just have to pick up 10 times as many items to get the same effect. You don't have fractured mods and whatnot. And as you said, I agree with your point that for me personally, I would rather pick up an Orb of Alchemy, have the agencies who put it on wherever I wanted to, than pick up a random rare item and hope. But like this is something where GGG just kind of like has nostalgia for it, but they don't want to go the Last Epoch route, but they also don't want to go the PoE route, so they're kind of like stuck in between.
And the thing is, man, like if you play SSF, you do find upgrades on the ground, like fairly consistently. A bigger problem facing ground loot, if there even is a problem, is trade. People will completely circumvent their progress by using the trade site to like leapfrog into getting way better gear than they should have by using the trade site. It's not from crafting. So they've like gutted one of the best systems in PoE 1 and it feels like they're blaming the wrong thing. Like there is lots of cool stuff to find on the ground in PoE 1. If you play PoE 1 SSF, you're finding plenty of upgrades throughout the campaign, early maps in the form of upgrades. I don't know. And then the types of upgrades and things you find on the ground, like the ground loot you find, it changes into like bases and stuff. Fractured bases, cool like essences. There's lots of stuff on the ground.
Honestly, they should take notes from PoE 1, because PoE 1 already did that kind of, right? Where, for example, Alva mods. You can't like craft into Alva mods. If you find a good Alva item, it's like, whoa. Or a good delve mod, right? And it's not fractured. You're like, ooh, I can make something out of this. But they don't have that yet, so maybe that's how they're gonna make it work in the future. Maybe that's basically the same as the Last Epoch system, right? That's what I literally just said. It's like items that you find that are different to what you would craft, and that's, I think, the only way to do it. And if they add that on top, maybe. But for me, people who say they just need to add more crafting leagues are, in my opinion, misinformed. Because if the baseline isn't there, I don't think adding shit on top of it will make it stink less, right? My opinion, but
I don't think that we need to have scours and alterations in the game to have a good crafting system. I think the system that we have right now is bare bones and empty, and you can't do anything with it. But I don't think you need scours to make good crafting. There is absolutely very cool things that they can add on top of this base, which I actually do think in the long run is a better system, because it is not only crafting. The end game of PoE 1 is only crafting. You never find anything on the ground that matters. And just like Pal said, when you go and play Last Epoch, you're excited to find that one giga mod that you can't get from crafting. And so this new system requires you to interact with ground loot. Now, it's not good right now, but it requires you to interact with ground loot. And when they add, I say when, not if, they will add more crafting systems that will flesh out this, relying on new bases sort of system. And when they add that, I think we can have a very good crafting system. I don't have all the solutions in front of me right now, but I don't think not having scours is the problem. I think it's not having solutions with the current like base system that they've implemented.
Yeah. You could, if they don't have scours, at least have Reforged. But I'm also disagreeing about not interacting with ground loot. I'm really curious, when was the last time you played a build in PoE 2 and found a piece of ground loot that you were like, oh, sweet, this is an upgrade?
Actually, all the time.
One of your endgame builds. On one of your endgame builds?
Well, when you say endgame, what do you mean? Like, when's the last time I found a 50 div item on the ground? Or like,
I mean,
a good item that I can use?
Like, an item that, like, let's say you're running a build that's doing like tier 15s. How often are you finding a rare item on the ground that you pick up and you're like, this is a direct upgrade?
Often enough to continue picking up the top bases.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I don't pick up armor bases because armor's bad, but I pick up evasion, ES, and then hybrid of those. And I regularly find
trade
to do what?
Are you using trade to like build your builds, like to find upgrades or not? You are?
That felt like a setup. Yeah, I'm doing both things.
The thing is,
I can't believe that, honestly, because you can't even change res or anything, or have like any agency over your suffixes. So I would highly doubt that you actually found multiple pieces that actually fit your build. Because it's not just about what you just said with like evasion, energy shield. It's like you have to actually have the suffixes lined up as well.
Yeah. So I guess how often am I replacing my gear with ground loot at level 95 when am like deleting +4 Zesht? Never. How often am I doing it at level 89 when I'm still kind of like working things out? Often. So
yeah, same as PoE 1.
Right, but I don't think the threshold is you have to be able to find things on the ground regularly that upgrade your build when you're already deleting the entire game. I feel like that's
So
that's
why
not
does
fair.
crafting need to die for that?
I didn't say crafting has to die.
My question. I know you're not saying it, but that's kind of like, is that why they killed crafting? So that ground loot matters more, but it doesn't actually matter more because the trade site still exists? Does that make sense?
In a sense, you have to.
You're
right?
sneaking
like
in
if
killed
you can craft
crafting
everything
there.
from a white item, there is no need to pick up items. So,
but then the same with the trade side.
To reduce how good crafting is. There's no other way.
Well, but then get rid of the trade site. The trade site, because that is where most players find upgrades, is the trade site. It's not self-crafting. Most people, I don't think, in PoE 1 are like finding a base, finding the materials, crafting the item, like people will tell you when their full build is self-crafted and they're very proud of it. Then, like when someone avoids using the trade site, they will tell you.
No, sure, but like the game is intended for trade. There is an SSF mode, right?
Yeah.
But there is a trade where it's like, oh, you pick up something that's worthwhile for somebody else. Well,
Exactly.
now you can sell it to them and you can buy other. I know what you mean, but like, you cannot achieve what PoE 1 has while still having ground loot matter. That is a fantasy, right? Like, I'm sure you know that. It's like impossible.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree because I don't know. I think
they had to add over quality in PoE 1 so that bases mattered.
No, where I disagree,
they literally didn't matter.
A little bit in the middle. I guess I'm just a little bit in the middle because I agree with Arrow, but I also disagree with needing it to be that way, right? Like I agree with you, Lolcohol, because it's like, why do we need to like put it on such a high pedestal to be able to pick up items and them being maybe an upgrade? So I would also rather have currency-esque items where I have the agency what to do with them. But at the same time, Arrow is right. If their vision, I think they're actually doing it the right way, which makes me a little bit scared. But at the same time, it's like they're going to go more and more into what Last Epoch does probably, and then they're going to solve it. So that's what Arrow meant with adding extra systems, right?
Okay, I understand. Yeah. Is that what you meant, Arrow?
Yeah. My point is that I feel like you started and you kind of snuck in a few premises here that like scouring orbs are inherently good, and if you don't have them, you won't have a good crafting system, which I don't agree with. And that like crafting has to be independent of ground loot. I think ground loot being vital to whatever crafting systems are coming is their vision. They don't want you to be able to just go, oh, I'll just, I dropped 27 of Highborn Bow in this map. I'll just grab one of them and I'll make my perfect endgame item off of that base. They want the bases to matter. They want you to have to try multiple times. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I just don't think that we currently have the tools to make that system look good. So as those tools come,
I understand what you mean.
we will.
I'll make it a little bit more complex though. I'll fuck up the conversation a little bit for a second.
Love it.
So if you think about the well again, right? The funny part is, if you think about what a currency item is, it is literally just a time saver, right? It is, instead of having to pick the item up, unidentified or whatever, you now have an Orb of Alchemy that's literally, oh, this is now a rare. It's the same, right? Like it's literally 1-to-1 the same. Chaos Orb is literally 1-to-1 the same as picking up another item with that base. Like it is 1-to-1 the same, whether you identify two items or have one plus a Chaos Orb, right? So if you see currency as like this time saver in the context of crafting, then what they basically made is a lot of wells, right? So where the right like mixture lies is up to debate, but I just wanted to give another well take. So
I just comes back to the well.
I want to just clarify. I love trade in this game. I'm so glad we have a trade system and like open trade. I'm just saying that if the desire is to make ground loot matter more, why is crafting being killed for it rather than trade? I'm saying like I feel like trade is a bigger offender than the crafting. That's
also,
all I meant.
Another premise that you've snuck in is that crafting has been killed. I think crafting has been restarted. We don't have all of the endgame systems that are in PoE 1. Of course, a new system coming into PoE 2 is going to feel empty, right? Like it's not going to have Eldritch implicits. It's not going to have all of these different influences, all of harvest, all of these things.
That's
You're saying crafting is killed. So what killed crafting?
The foundations have been cut. They've removed all forms of reforge. Those were things that were in PoE 1 in like 2011. Alterations, Chaos Orb, reforge.
Baseline.
Exactly. Like I understand maybe you can remove scours, but if there's no form of reforge as well, we are like now pre-PoE 1 like alpha. So it's not even that we're like we don't have Eldritch and Harvest and this. It's like the system we have right now is worse than PoE 1 on release. That's why it's like, what the fuck is happening? Like
that is the issue. There is not enough base currencies, not like add on top or anything like that, just baseline currency. PoE crafting was good in 2013. I'll say it. It was really good in 2013, and everything on top just like made it better. But right now it's like poo-poo, and you can't really make it not stink by just like putting stuff on top, right? That's literally that's where I would agree as well. So there needs to be some tweaking. But I also agree with Arrow that once again, scourings cannot exist in PoE 2. Otherwise, like if you introduce scourings, you're gonna come to the same conclusions as in PoE 1. There's no other, like then you're gonna be literally PoE 1.
What was the problem with PoE 1? That's the question I have.
They want to be different. They said that pretty good. Dude, they changed the leech system for no reason, just to be different. Leech does nothing. It makes no sense right now. PoE 1 had the best leech system ever. Like they want to be different, and that's fine, right? They want to test out new stuff. It is what it is.
Okay, all right. I guess what you're saying, Arrow, is the moment they add in the identical foundation, everything that follows it will just naturally follow the same trajectory as PoE 1, and we'll end up with the same systems. But by kind of like undercutting the current foundation of crafting that we have in PoE 2 compared to PoE 1, it opens up the door to maybe completely different and interesting systems that may end up being cool.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think that they changed the foundation. We keep using that word. They changed the foundation to now be, okay, bases matter more. You can't just recycle the same base until it's perfect. And that base is what they want to work with. And I actually agree. I think that's a more interesting base than any item you find on the ground can become mirror tier. I think. So imagine, don't add this, GGG. Imagine a system where you maybe a tier 16 map with certain mods on it will drop tier 5 rares more often. And those tier 5 rares maybe can be crafted on in the same way that they drop as tier 5. They can get tier 5 base rarity for modifiers, right? So it cuts out all the bad mods, whatever. Adding something like that now takes the current system and goes, all right, we're going to be finding way better bases. And then we're going to be able to kind of hunt those bases down and work on those with some other new system they add in a different league. That you would be talking about this completely differently if that was in the game right now. I'm not trying to defend the state of the game now. I'm saying I believe that requiring taking out scours and alts to require you to use new items more often makes ground loot matter more, and that's what they're going for.
Okay. Yeah. I get it. I think I even said at the start, maybe they've got some gigabrain systems that we just haven't seen yet. And this is totally possible. Knowing GGG, they might have some brilliant ideas that just we're seeing like a tiny piece of the bigger picture. Either that or I don't know. I would like to believe that is the case.